Hello, I'm Jack Fink, and you're watching Eye on Politics on CBS News, Dallas-Fort Worth. The political firestorm continues to intensify over the deadly mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. This week, families of the victims expressed outrage after the Austin American-Statesman and KVUE-TV in Austin released video from inside the school. The video shows law enforcement officers staging in the hallway outside the classrooms where the gunman shot and killed the 19 students and their 2 teachers. Legislative leaders wanted to show the video to the families first before it's released to the public. Families of the victims were noticeably upset.
Whoever leaked that video, I pray that you never have to deal with what all the parents, the grandparents, the siblings, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins are dealing with. Shame on you.
My colleague Ken Molestina spoke with Democratic State Senator Roland Gutierrez, who represents Uvalde, about the release of the video.
First off, every family, I've talked to many already, that are very disturbed that this was distributed to the media before they had a chance to view it in a more sensitive manner as they were promised. That didn't happen. Someone in government failed. I found out that 8 senators or state representatives, don't know which, were given this video pursuant to some non-disclosure agreement. It's a concern to me that either one of those people or somebody on this committee or someone in the governor's office or a DPS did this in a manner that was contrary to what they promised these families. As to the video itself, it's what we've all envisioned, a chaotic scene of police officers from many different law enforcement agencies doing a whole lot of nothing, not going into the room. That was clear. And so it's very disturbing as you watch them try to figure out what needs to happen. But the policy manual tells you what needs to happen. You go in. That didn't happen here on May 24th.
I know that you have been at the forefront of demanding that these videos be made public to the families, to Uvalde, eventually to us. Obviously, in this case, it didn't happen necessarily in that order, but it is out. And what we see in some of it is, and I got to see, obviously, the video, there's one officer sanitizing his hands, you know, with the little sanitizer pump on the wall, another one checking his phone. What is that indicative of?
Well, you see the guy you see kind of a made for TV moment here, because this video is a combination of hallway video and body cam from the guy in the shorts. And he is a game warden. And so he's obviously he's got a schematic, I think, in his hand, and he's trying to figure out what's what. You see a DPS trooper kind of, barking out orders to different people, or at least talking to different people in a lot of those scenes. And so it's hard to imagine here that anybody was in charge. It seems to be that everybody wanted to be in charge, but that nobody took any kind of real direction. We know from McCraw's own testimony that none of his officers listened to Mr. Arredondo. So clearly they weren't giving any indication of what happened on that day.
I visited Uvalde a couple of times now and spoken to family members. And one of the things that they keep asking for when I ask them, what do you all need? What do you all want? Is this transparency. They want the videos, they want answers. They want, their questions, all the questions that they have to officials down there in Uvalde to be answered. Does this video get us any closer to sort of that relief that they're looking for? I don't even want to call it closure, because they all told me there's no way you get closure for something like this. So I want to be careful not to really use that word. But do you think this release gets them any sort of closer to what they want?
Well, I can tell you this. I didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement, and so therefore I haven't seen this. I did see 3 minutes in the trailer of the first 7 officers go in there, and it's from a fisheye camera in a hallway. And that fisheye camera is not evidenced in this video. And that's important to know for this reason. You see the officers go in and get repelled by gunfire, and you see shards of sheetrock and glass flying over their head. That should scare all of us, because that is the awesome and fearful and dreaded power of an AR-15. And that's why all of those officers were outside of that hallway because they were so afraid. Imagine what those children felt as they lay there inside as this guy randomly fired at them, because he continued to fire sporadically throughout that piece. And so you had all of these officers in presumed fear or whatnot, hesitancy, whatever you want to call it. The fact is they didn't follow their own protocols because they knew what they were facing in firepower. It's shameful what happened on May 24th. And what's most shameful, and I know that these officers will have to live with this for the rest of their lives, is that they stood outside of a hallway determining what else they needed to get done or what other kind of equipment they needed, when what they needed was enough bravery to go into that room immediately as their training dictated. And what's even more shameful is that we have a DPS director that blamed it on a guy, said he was in charge. Nothing I see in that video indicates that Peter Arredondo or anybody was in charge. And that is what's most disconcerting to me.
Sounds like you're saying this is not necessarily an issue of training, but rather bravery. They knew what they had to do. They just didn't do it.
The kids were brave. They were brave. Not so much on the law enforcement side.
What sort of ripple effect has this video now had with your constituents and folks that you're talking to? And you said you just got back from Washington. I wonder what kind of conversations you had over there.
Family members were very devastated that it was released in a manner contrary to what they were told. They feel like they've been lied to. They feel like they just can't trust anybody. They've been put in a spot where they're just dealing in an emotional roller coaster that doesn't seem to stop. Mm-hmm. And they just want the truth as to what happened. I filed a lawsuit against DPS. It's my hope that as we go through that legal proceeding, we'll be able to get all of the cameras, all of the body cams, and go through it all, and probably end up having to give it to some expert agency to compile it and put it in the right way. What we got here was just nonsense.
That was actually going to be my next question. So we got some of it. What else do you want to see? What else are you pushing for?
We see a made-for-TV video that's edited, that has got a camera portion to it, one body cam. There's 360 officers on the scene. There was 19 in that hallway. There was different, there was different angles from the school. We need to be able to see that information in its totality without editing. We don't even have the fisheye that clearly shows 7 officers go in and get repelled. That's not on those 77 minutes. You see one angle of it from a different camera far beyond. I saw those 3 minutes in the first week because I went into a trailer to argue with DPS about an issue. As I left that room, I saw about 9 Rangers rather, watching this video. And I saw the horroring power of that weaponry.
I know the governor had asked for this video. He was saying that he wanted transparency as well, and he pushed for the full video to be released. Do you think that this is, or the edited version of what we saw was just enough to sort of quell that for now?
The governor wants to placate a bunch of people, and he wants us all to, stay quiet. The fact is, people want change, and they want change where it's appropriate. They want to stop having 18-year-olds have access to this type of weaponry. And we're 35 days away from school starting, and he refuses to do that. So he thinks that he's going to quell us with a little bit of information. Quite frankly, none of us have seen the most harrowing part. And I'm not asking to see children lying in a classroom. Everybody should see those 7 kids as they walk out. Those 7 officers as they're repelled by gunfire, and that gunfire is just throwing out construction material at them.
Do you think we'll ever get to see that?
I'm demanding that we see it. I filed a lawsuit so that people can see it, and I'll be very respectful of those families. I promise you that. What's happened here is an abomination by government. We deserve better from government. We deserve better from this office. We deserve better from the Department of Public Safety and Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star, all of whose members were in that community, were in that school. We deserve better.
On Monday, before the video came out, there was a dispute between the chairman of the Texas House Committee investigating Uvalde, who requested a copy of it, and the Uvalde County District Attorney, who didn't want him to have a copy of it. In Dallas Monday, I asked Governor Greg Abbott about the concerns that many people have expressed that the video and the full truth wouldn't be made public.
Let me be clear and let me be adamant. The full truth about what happened in Uvalde must be disclosed to the public, especially the people of Uvalde, and must be done quickly. One thing that must be done is the release of that more than 70-minute video of exactly what happened in the school on that day.
The House committee will soon be releasing a preliminary report about what happened in Uvalde as well. The extensive and intense Texas heat prompted ERCOT this week to ask Texans to voluntarily conserve energy. Texans did, and there were no issues with the power grid. We asked Governor Abbott if he's had conversations with ERCOT and the Public Utility Commission about how long the grid can continue to operate at such a high level.
I talked to the head of the PUC multiple times a week. And they say that because of the reforms that we were able to put in place last session, because of the increase in the power generation capacity by more than 15% over last year, that is why the power grid has been so resilient despite the skyrocketing temperatures. We've seen in other states other challenges they've had that we have not yet had in the state of Texas, and it's in part because the power grid is stronger than it's ever been.
While ERCOT and the PUC are navigating challenges this summer, they are also planning for the future of the Texas energy market. We spoke with an energy expert and a small business owner about the grid. It takes high energy in the kitchen to keep up with the lunch crowd at Desperado's Mexican restaurant in Garland. But Michael Levy, whose family has operated this and another restaurant for 45 years, says he's concerned there could be power outages this summer because of the extreme Texas heat and demand for air conditioning.
And just getting over this pandemic, now we're hit with another obstacle. So this is it's concerning.
As ERCOT and the Public Utility Commission of Texas navigate supply and demand, they're also looking toward the future of the energy market in Texas. Joshua Rhodes, a research associate at the Weber Energy Group at the University of Texas, says the state should require companies to provide reliable energy without picking one technology over another.
We need things that are firm, and whether that's, renewables paired with energy storage, or that's natural gas, or that's some other type of generation that we're able to turn on.
Right now, he says the state has more solar and wind power generation plants in the pipeline than natural gas-fired plants. And batteries that store wind energy, like this one near Granbury by Vistra Corp, are also being built. We asked Vistra Corp's president, Jim Burke, back in May about the kinds of plants he believes need to be brought online to keep up with the rapid population growth and extreme heat.
But I think at the rate Texas is growing, it's going to have to look at traditional sources like gas-fired generation if it wants to keep up the growth that it is.
So back here at Desperado's, owner Michael Levy says he's preparing for what's next in case there are power outages.
We could put everything on gas burners, and that's one way that we could do it. And we could relocate our food and put it in the freezer. But when we're opening and shutting the doors, then we're letting all the cool air out.
The bottom line, he says, is having a contingency plan in place. Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson has announced new initiatives to keep violent crime from spiking this summer. We spoke with him about the challenges the city is facing.
The bottom line is, when it comes to keeping our residents safe, we can never, ever become complacent. We have to be relentless about making sure that our residents are safe. And even though Dallas's violent crime is moving in the right direction, it's continuing to fall, I just wanted to make sure that going into the summer that we kept our foot on the gas, so to speak, and to make sure that we were doing everything we possibly could, both from a police perspective and from a community perspective and from the city government's perspective, to make sure Dallas continues on that path to becoming the safest large city in America. So I announced some initiatives I think will help us move in that direction.
And so let's talk a little bit about them. Blight remediation. So is this a change from the past? Because this was a big part of what came out of your task force a couple years ago. And so talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, Jack, true to form, it's about being more aggressive and more more acting with a little bit more urgency with respect to blight remediation. So what I'm talking about is changing our approach, and I'm working with our city attorney's office on this. This is modeled after something that was very successful in Philadelphia, where rather than going through a lengthy legal process to get an owner to remediate a blighted property, we have state laws in place right now that we're not fully utilizing, similar to what they had in Philadelphia, where we can just go in and remediate these properties ourselves. And the cost that we would save in terms of reduced crime, reduced violent crime, reduced police resources that are having to be dedicated to addressing the crime that comes from these areas would more than offset the cost of just putting a door or putting a new facade on some of these buildings so they don't look so run down. So the change is in, rather than going after through a legal process, these owners taking a long time, not particularly effective, getting them to remediate these properties, let's just go in and fix these properties so these neighborhoods can get spruced up and so the crime leaves these communities.
Has that been a real issue where, it just takes forever seemingly to, get these private property owners to fix what's needed?
Well, it is a challenge. There's really a very few things that if you have to go through a court mandated legal process that goes quickly, and that's really in any area. So that's not really to cast aspersion on this particular process, but yeah, it takes a lot longer to file a lawsuit, and our legal system gives people opportunities to respond, and it's pretty generous about making sure that defendants in lawsuits have an opportunity to respond, and that's about due process and things like that. So yeah, these things take time, and we don't have time. I'm trying to make sure that our neighborhoods are safe right now for the people who live in this city right now. And the way we need to do that is to just go in and fix these minor issues in some cases that will help, clear these lots, address these abandoned buildings, clean them up, and push the crime out.
I wanted to ask you about some of the other things on your list. I know there's a lot on there, but what else stands out to you as being new, that's something that the city has not done?
Similar to the blight remediation, I want us to start working directly with TABC to take away the liquor licenses of problematic establishments. What we are finally, I think, starting to get some sort of alignment behind. And I've been saying these things for 3 years now, but we have a police chief who sees it the same way. We've got a city council who's come around who's seeing these things the same way. We have to approach crime differently in some cases and address the root causes of some of these issues. And we know that there are some establishments in our city where incidents just seem to keep on happening. That's what the sexually oriented business ordinance was about. It's about the fact that between 2 and 6 o'clock in the morning, a lot of people get hurt, people get killed, and we need to do something about that. We know that. We should not pretend like we don't know that. We need to go after it. Similarly, there are establishments, bars and whatnot, who just consistently have fights that turn into aggravated assaults, and in some cases turn into murders. We know where they are, and rather than going through this lengthy process again to try to address it locally, the TABC has a process in place to take a problem establishment's liquor license away, and I want us to start using that process.
I did want to ask you, because you mentioned it before, and I checked with the crime stats, and through Tuesday, yes, overall violent crime in the city of Dallas is down 2% year to year. Murders are up almost 17%. Business robberies are up a little more than 16%. So I know the chief has his violent crime reduction plan. Do you think these policies, as quickly as you can get them into place, will help make a dent in all that?
I do, and we have to start yesterday. I mean, the best time to start these programs I'm talking about is yesterday, and the next best day is today. So that's what we're doing. But yeah, I do think that we have an issue. I'm disturbed by the number of young people who are involved in crime in Dallas, and I see stories, too frequently, of minors involved in very serious crimes. That's what the summer safety effort I've launched was about making sure our young people have things to do in the summer so that we don't see that typical uptick in crime in the summer, and particularly as it relates to youth who are out of school. But I also think these efforts are going to help because it's part of that kitchen sink approach I've been talking about for 3 years now about how this is not just a problem with the police department. Yes, we absolutely must hire more police officers and support our police department. And I've been saying that for a long time. I've been saying that for 3 years as well. But what I've also been saying is that the community plays a role in all of this. And one of the things we have to do is deal with crime where it's emanating, sexually oriented businesses, these problem bars. We need our school systems that overlap Dallas to help us with social emotional learning. They've been doing it, but we need more of it. And we need to deal with blight remediation and lighting at a faster clip than we've been doing it. I'm confident if we keep doing that, we'll push the crime rate down even further. So you are correct. Our violent crime was down last year, the only top 10 city in America where that's true, and it's down more this year. But homicides are up, and we are doing everything we can to turn that number around. That's a more complicated matter, and we can talk about that anytime you want to, because homicide's a special type of violent crime. But we are doing very well in Dallas on violent crime, and we're kind of a model for the nation, actually.
Last question, and that is perception. I'm going to be talking to a business owner who was near some of the shootings in Deep Ellum. And we were talking on the phone earlier, and he said, he's had customers come in who, they're visiting from out of town. They stay in hotels. The people at the hotels tell them, Deep Ellum is great, but boy, don't go there after dark. And so he's having to battle that perception problem. What can you say about that?
Well, okay, here are the facts. Violent crime in Dallas is declining. Overall, violent crime is declining. It's down again this year from a year that was down last year, more so than any other top 10 city in the country. That being said, one victim is too many. And if you know someone who's been victimized by a violent crime, those statistics mean nothing to you. And I understand that, which is why I think we have to stay relentless about this, because it just doesn't matter that in the grand scheme of things, Dallas is one of the safest big cities in the country. We need to be the safest big city in the country, and we need that narrative to change. So we're doing everything we can. And with respect to these nightlife areas like Deep Ellum, that's what this new initiative that I propose about going after people's liquor licenses is about. I mean, the fact of the matter is if these places where some of these crimes are happening, if it's consistently happening in the same places, we need to put the burden on those property owners and those business owners to do what it takes to address that. If not, we need to talk about taking their licenses away. But also we need to do everything we can to keep our young people from getting involved in crime in the first place. And that's a collective effort. But I'm in for it. And I know that our city is behind me on this, because we do have a great city, and we want that perception to match the reality.
Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack.
That's all for Eye on Politics this week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jack Fink. You're watching CBS News, Dallas-Fort Worth.